Hi, I'm Wade Hansen. I've been selling luxury real estate in Minnesota and Wisconsin for over 23 years. My entire career has been spent protecting my clients from misinformation and unethical practices by those not looking out for their best interests. This podcast will give you the raw truth about everything real estate so you can make solid, informed decisions about the biggest investment of your lifetime. This is the Raw Real Estate Podcast. I've gotten to know you fairly well here over the last couple of years, but for those that don't know you, give me a little background on you, your real estate background, how long you've been doing it, where you're at today, and just some information about just your real estate experience.
Well, I actually got into the business, it's about 42 years now. So unfortunately, I use this line with an awful lot of people today and say, yeah, I've been doing this longer than you've been alive, which is true in a lot of cases. So it's been a good run. I've done everything from obviously to sell and manage, and I've owned brokerage operations, and today I'm the general manager for RE/MAX Results here in the Twin Cities.
Of those roles, which one have you liked the best?
Depends on the day.
Okay.
Right?
I know you still sell.
I do a little bit, yes.
Yep.
Yeah. And
you still enjoy that?
I still enjoy it. Still love the interaction with the clients, and it is a good way for me to keep kind of boots on the ground. Yeah. And just make sure I'm understanding what you guys are experiencing out in the marketplace every day. So that helps. At least I think it does.
I think it's really important to have managers and people above us doing what we do so they understand what we're going through on a daily basis. I think that's super important. What do you like best about the business?
The freedom, right? That entrepreneurial kind of piece of the business that allows you to kind of create what you want to create. It's probably the biggest nemesis a lot of agents face as well, right? Because a lot of them can't handle freedom very well. Yeah. But that's for me. It's hands down. That's it.
When do I get my freedom? I've been doing this 22 years. I don't know what is that freedom. I work a lot of evenings and weekends, and but no, it does allow a lot of freedom. That's for sure. How about least? What do you like least about the business? What's the biggest challenges you've had in the business?
Biggest challenge. I suppose at least early on in the career, it was the income disparities that you had between closings, right? So as you're kind of building your business, and you go for several months without a paycheck, and then you have 4 of them, and so there was you're trying to make the wheel round instead of square, and it just takes some while to get that done. Yeah. So that was probably the biggest challenge, but since then. No, it's been great. The whole run's been great.
You've seen it all. 42 years. You've seen the good, the bad, the ugly.
Seen the good, the bad, recessions, and
everything in between.
Everything in between. Yeah.
You think we'll ever see a market like we saw in 2021 ever again in our lifetime? I mean, it was wild. It was unlike anything I'd seen.
It was.
Do you think you'll ever see it again?
Probably not. I'm hopeful that we won't see the recession we saw from 07 to 12 again. Right. This 2020 was just crazy. Yeah. Just crazy.
Yeah. What is the pandemic and just the last almost 2 years taught you about the business?
That we become pretty creative in trying to solve certain problems that the pandemic created for us, right? And it's interesting that a lot of those procedural issues are now permanent, right? It's like, hey, you know what? This is actually a better way than how we used to do it. So let's keep doing this, pandemic or no pandemic. Yeah. So it's just interesting that, dire times, suddenly there's an opportunity that's born out of that.
Yeah, I think we were kind of eventually going to get to some of those processes. I think COVID maybe expedited that process of getting to the new processes, right? Yeah. So you've been kind of dubbed the iBuyer expert. For whatever reason, you've been dubbed the iBuyer expert. I know you've done a lot of research on this. You spent a lot of times, countless seminars and articles, and I feel you're very, very versed in an iBuyer. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about iBuyers. Okay. And just for the average consumer out there, tell us what an iBuyer is and how that works.
Sure. So an iBuyer is just a fancy name for a guaranteed offer, right? And so historically, they've always been around. There have always been people that have done cash transactions, and that's what an iBuyer is with a guaranteed offer. It's say, I've got cash, and I don't have to jump through the hoops of getting financing, anything like that. I can make this very convenient for you. We can do it very quickly. And so that's been around for decades, right? And most of us might think of companies like HomeVestors, as kind of that model, right? Well, Wall Street got into it here a half a dozen years ago or so, and venture capitalists said, hey, you know what, we think there's an opportunity here to try to take an Amazon approach to real estate and to somehow see if we can't create a more streamlined process for consumers to buy and sell real estate. Okay, at least that was the story, right? And so they came into the market and basically said, look, here we are. We're providing a new service to the consumer. We're providing a more institutional focus on how we operate in this space. Okay? And we can do it, and we can save you money. We can save you time. And so that's been the story. Okay. Now, realistically, by their own admission, most iBuyer companies and the companies that have existed up to today, the public might have heard of Zillow, Opendoor, OfferPad, Swift. So those are some that are sort of national names that people might recognize, have stated that their goal, realistically, recognizing that the way their financial model is set up is going to appeal to maybe about 5% of the population. Okay, and so what they really wanted was they wanted to capture 5% market share in the top 25 markets in the country. That was their goal, and they had about a 10-year plan in place to see if they could make that happen. And I think that that what's happened, or at least what we've seen so far, if we take COVID out of it and try and remove the pandemic of 2020, they've probably moved ahead fairly well in trying to achieve those numbers, okay? With the exception of Zillow pulling out completely of that model now here just within the last couple of weeks. And there are all kinds of reasons why that happened. But I think that it's not going away. It's a relatively good model for a small percentage of the consumers who value time more than they value money. Because it's not something where the average consumer is going to get more money from an iBuyer or a guaranteed offer. They're going to get less. And usually what we're seeing anyway is it's typically in the 5 to 10% less than what they could get retail, working with Wade Hansen.
Sure. Yeah.
So, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay. You touched on Zillow. Why? You said there's a number of reasons why they failed. Give me a couple of reasons why you think they weren't successful in the iBuyer program.
Well, I can speculate a little bit. Some I think we know, and some is speculation.
Sure.
So I think what we know is that what Richard Barton has said, the CEO of Zillow, is that they've always been trying to move their model to a place where their guaranteed offer number would exactly be what their Zestimate is. And I'm sure anybody that's been on the Zillow site has seen the Zestimate for the properties that they're looking at.
Sure.
And so they wanted those to be consistent. Okay. Well, they were never able to get there.
Sure.
For whatever reason, their algorithms couldn't be honed to the point where they could make those things consistent. Okay, and I think that caused some frustration. They couldn't react quickly enough to changes in the market that we've had. If you're in an always escalating market, it's pretty easy.
Right. But
once, at least here in the Twin Cities, as much as we don't want to admit it, there is some seasonality to this business. So in these markets, suddenly the algorithms become more difficult to try and put together, so that you can still continue to make money when they're flipping properties. Okay, so that would be one. The other is, we went through a period of time this year in 2021 where all of us were scratching our head a little bit because we saw Zillow specifically paying some numbers that we'd never seen before, and to the benefit of the consumer, right? In fact, the numbers they were paying were more than a lot of us were saying, hey, your house is worth this, and Zillow's coming saying, we're going to pay you that plus 5%. It's like, oh my goodness, it's homeowners have just won the lottery in going down that road. So we're trying to figure out, well, why would they do that? What's the rationale behind that model? Because they can't, their model is buy it, turn it over quickly, and resell it and make money. Right. Well, if you're overpaying, you've got to wait for the market to catch up, which means you're in a holding pattern for a long time, especially at the numbers that they were paying, before they're going to see any kind of profit out of the thing. So some thought they were trying to manipulate the market a little bit. If you have an inventory of, let's say, 20 homes that are all similar, right, and you bought them all for $400,000. And then you go and buy 2 or 3 of them for $450 or $500, and you say, my gosh, why would they do that? Well, from an appraisal standpoint, now they've got some evidence to be able to convince an appraiser that these other 40 or 50 that they have are now worth that as well. And so basically the asset on the book just went up in value probably several $1 million. Right? So now that's speculation.
Sure.
Okay, but it's the only thing that seems to make sense in terms of what were they trying to do. And obviously it all sort of imploded here 2 weeks ago, where they figured out, they threw up their hands and said, we can't make it work.
Yeah. And they've since completely pulled out of that market, correct?
They are in the process of pulling out of the market.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, interesting. What are the fees typically associated with an average iBuyer program?
Yeah,
what can a consumer expect?
When they originally came to the Twin Cities, Open Door was here first, okay, and Zillow came in within a few months behind them. And when Open Door first came in, their range, and it's dependent on the property itself and location, a lot of variables, was anywhere from 6.5 to 13.
Wow.
Okay. Zillow came in, and their bottom end was 8%, and they went from about 8 to about 13. Okay. Today, because of the volatility that we've seen in the market here this year in 2021, we're seeing those numbers run anywhere from probably on the low end about 7, and we've seen them as high as 20.
Wow.
And those are big numbers.
Those are huge numbers.
Those are huge service fee numbers. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. And there was some fees involved. They'd do an inspection, and there was fees involved for the inspection. Can you touch on that just a little bit?
So what's typical with any type of offer, whether it's coming from a guaranteed offer company or even the consumer, right? In a lot of cases, there's an inspection involved, right, where they're asking for a period of time to do an inspection, okay? And so with a normal consumer, they come in and say, okay, we've had the inspection done, we've found a couple of things that we're a little concerned about, and so let's negotiate these out between us. And typically it's, hey, sellers, would you be willing to correct these 2 items?
Right.
Okay, and the seller says yes or no, and assuming they say yes, then we move on and we're fine. Okay. With the iBuyer companies, in those cases where they found things that were problematic, they would never ask for the seller to do anything. All they would do is monetize those items as a result of the inspection. And so they would come back with a final offer of saying, okay, we originally offered X, and now because of the things that we found during the inspection, we're going to offer you Y. Okay? And that's what they would do.
Interesting.
In all cases. Okay?
Interesting.
And then Zillow specifically also had another fee that they called it a holdback fee, and it was $5,000, so that at the closing they would retain an extra $5,000 from the seller for a 30-day period to look at the property once the sellers had vacated, make a determination as to whether or not it was in the condition they were expecting it to be in. If not, they had rights to any amount of that $5,000 to make those corrections, and then at the end of 30 days, if there was any money left in that holdover account or holdback account, then it would go back to the seller.
Sure.
Yeah.
Interesting. And Results has launched a similar program, correct, called Simple Offer?
Well, it's a yes.
Okay.
I'll say what it does, Simple Offer here at RE/MAX Results, what it does is it's a platform for you as a sales executive to be able to counsel your client in different options of selling, right? Obviously, the best offer in the vast majority of cases where they're going to make the most money is Wade Hansen doing exactly what Wade Hansen always does. He puts it out there in the market. He knows how to market effectively. He's going to get the most money for the home.
Right.
Absolutely, not a question. Another option would be the guaranteed offer, right? And so it's a platform that's built so that if the seller is saying, Wade, I appreciate that, and we're probably going to do that, but I've heard so much about this in media and everything I'm reading, I'd like to know what that kind of an offer might bring us. Okay? Well, through Simple Offer, you can fill in the address, you can fill in some information about their property, you push a button, and there's an electronic request that goes out to the iBuyer companies that are actively working the Twin City marketplace.
Okay.
And so within 24 to 48 hours, you'll get an offer. Now Zillow's out, but Open Door, OfferPad, Redfin just came in, sort of filling the vacuum that Zillow is vacating. So whether Redfin becomes part of the platform that we're working with or not, I don't know yet. I'll probably have an answer on that within the next week or so. But that's the mechanism of what Simple Offer is and how it works.
Interesting. I'll be real honest with you. In the price points that I deal in, I don't see a lot of the people getting involved in the guaranteed offers or simple offers. So it's not something I run into a lot, and most of my clients just don't want. It's just not something they'd be interested in. So I really haven't educated myself that much on it. So that's a lot of good information, and it'll be interesting to see if that truly becomes more of the new normal. What's your opinion on that? Do you think that there's always going to be a place for it? Do you think it'll take over more market share? What's your prediction?
I think there will always be a place for it. I do not think it will take over more market share.
Okay.
I think that at least there's nothing. Well, I'll say this: consumers love the Amazon experience, right? I keep asking everybody, hey, how many people in the room have our Amazon Prime? Right? And virtually every hand in the room goes up, and I say, okay, then you're going to make my point here. I'm one of the 3 people in the state that doesn't have it. Right? But you have that because you're looking for a level of experience that you can count on, right? And convenience. And so people look for that in all areas of life, and real estate is no different. And so if there's a mechanism there to help them realize more convenience by, I can eliminate showings, I can eliminate all the inspections, I can eliminate all that kind of stuff by potentially taking a guaranteed offer, I'm going to do it, assuming that I can live with the financial constraint that comes with that, right? Because it's going to be less money. So that I think it will always be there. But again, small percentage, 5%. Okay. That'll be about it.
Okay. So I want to shift gears a little bit. Thank you for that information. It's really good information, and I learned a lot. I didn't realize those fees were as high as 13% in some of those situations. That's crazy. Yeah. And just talk a little bit about just the market in general. So one of the reasons I'm sitting here in front of you is I'm just kind of frustrated, disappointed, disgusted with just the real estate industry. I think it's gotten to a point this last, we'll call it since COVID, almost 2 years, where I think there's things going on in this industry that are just more about the agent than about the consumer. And I think we've lost sight of what's important, and that's giving that consumer A, the best experience possible, and B, for a seller, trying to sell their home for as much money as possible in a short amount of time with the least amount of pain, right? And for a buyer, negotiating out a fair price and a fair, I guess, overall deal for that buyer. And I think we got into a situation this year where it was just more about an agent wanting to chase a commission check and get a deal done because there was more agents after, I think, fewer transactions. So I got to a level of frustration this year, and I'm just, what is one thing you wish the consumer knew about this industry that goes on? I mean, the ugly side of the industry. What is one thing you wish they were aware of in this industry?
Well, I think the consumer might be aware of it. And I'll say this. I'll say that in all of the years that I've been doing this, I have not experienced a year like 2021 in terms of the number of calls that I've been getting from you, okay, meaning RE/MAX Results sales executives saying, I'm absolutely frustrated. And the reason I'm frustrated and angry and upset is because the agent on the other side of the transaction has absolutely no clue about what they're doing. And because of that, they have caused a problem with the transaction where either it's unsolvable, or if it is solvable, it's like, okay, it's Rubik's Cube. How do we figure this thing out, right? So give me some answers. Try and help me get through this. Walk me through some solutions that maybe we can put on the table to resurrect this transaction. And so, we've seen this periodically, at least throughout my career, where the market gets really good.
Yep.
Right? And so we see this huge influx of agents because the bar of entry is so low. Okay, and so professionalism takes a dive. You've got consumers. Every consumer survey you ever see about real estate agents is, they don't think too much of us. Right. Well, and there's probably good reason for that, is because they have a lot of exposure to a lot of new people coming into the business, and when 85% of them are gone within 2 years, it doesn't say much about them necessarily in terms of their commitment to the business. It's like, come in, see if I can make an easy buck. And if I can't make an easy buck and the market turns, then I'm going to go do something else. Right? And so we're experiencing that right now. All of us that have really committed to this as a career for us, right, are experiencing that problem. So that's the big one. So my point, and to your question exactly, I'm all for someone getting into the business and trying to make this a career and being sincere about their efforts to try and do well. Okay? And so I say this with all due respect. If I'm a consumer today, there's no way I'm dealing with a new agent. Not even remotely close, because of everything that's going on in this business today and everything that you need to learn and understand, the nuances of the laws and how they change as frequently as they do, the marketing and how it shifts, and how online social media impacts values of properties today because of the marketing that's done there. There are just so many things that we have to know today. You just can't learn it, right, in the first days in the business. And I'm sitting there saying, boy, you know what? I don't know that I would entertain working with anybody who hasn't been doing this at least 5 or 10 years.
Yeah. Wholeheartedly agree with that statement. And I want to touch on one thing that you brought up in there. You said you're fielding more calls than ever from us as associates about just problems in the transaction. Has there been one consistent problem that has come up that it's just like, I just can't believe this keeps coming up? Is there anything that you've seen over the last couple of years that's been consistent?
The consistent problem has been the agent on the other side of the transaction not educating their client on what to expect based on the circumstances surrounding that transaction. In a lot of cases, Wade, I'd say if we're talking about financing, as an example, okay? And we all know that there are nuances to different types of financing, right? And so if you're working with government financing, FHA, VA, there are some hoops that are jumped through that you don't jump through with conventional financing. And so to not educate your people to expect and anticipate that there could be some roadblocks that we have to try and address down the road, depending on where this goes, it causes all kinds of consternation and anxiety and problems for their clients. Right, which ultimately then comes back and somehow affects the transaction completely on our side as well. Setting expectations is it's super important in this business. What do you think we can do different as agents? I know you've talked about the bar of entry, right? Experience. What can we do different as agents to make this process better for the consumer, or more of? Maybe some of us, some of the really good agents are doing it. What can we? So I will say this. Right now, today, the number one thing consumers are looking for from us, okay? It's, believe it or not, it's not our negotiating skills,
okay,
which it was a few years ago.
Yep.
All right. Today, they want open and honest communication. That's the number one thing. Okay.
Interesting.
So, how do we deliver that? Okay. Because that's what they're looking for.
Yeah.
And in fact, there was a survey that was just done, and of course, we don't rank very high, with a lot of consumers. Right. And they said the number one reason is they think we lie. Mm-hmm. Right. Well, that's an interesting observation, right? And I would say, well, where does that come from? Why would they think that, right? Maybe it has to do with the fact that on one side of the table, when we're representing sellers, we're trying to make that home sound great and look great, right? And so maybe we're using words that embellish a little bit what they're going to find with this particular home, and now they physically get into it and at a showing, and they say, "Gosh, this isn't nearly as nice as it was described to be." But that's our job as agents, is to try and create exposure for our selling clients, right? So maybe that's where their thoughts come from in that regard. But nevertheless, what they're really looking for is open and honest communication. The number one thing, absolutely.
I think a lot of agents do lie, Mike. I'm going to be honest with you. You might be afraid to say it, but I think a lot of agents do lie. I know I've been lied to many times throughout a transaction. And I know, for me, I'm the type of person that look, I always tell my people, I'm going to be as honest and as open with you as I can, right? I'm like your physician. I'm going to tell you to diet and exercise. You don't have to diet and exercise, but you're not going to lose that weight. So I'm going to tell you exactly what you need to do in order to maximize your home's value, in order to sell it in the shortest amount of time, in order to make this process as painless as possible. But you don't have to do these things. And some of these things you may not like to hear, but I'm not afraid to tell you those things. So, and I think a lot of agents out there are just telling consumers what they want to hear. And I think that's where the lies come in, right? So I would agree with that. So.
Yeah, well, and it's easier to do that in this market, right, where we've got such a huge inventory shortage, and so homes will sell, relatively quickly compared to history, right? And so you can get away with some of that.
It's easy to look good on social media these days as a realtor, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I mean, everybody's selling it in 2 days with 20 offers and 40 showings.
Right,
and,
absolutely.
I think that's slowly starting to change. I'm not sure what you're seeing out there, but what do you think the next 12 months is going to look like in this business if you were to have a crystal ball?
Well, I think that we are seeing just a bit of softening in the market. From my perspective, it's just seasonal, right? Now, in terms of the next 12 months, I'm still of the opinion that because of the shortage, I think appreciation rates next year are still going to hang in that 6% range, generally speaking.
Home appreciation,
yep.
6%?
Yep. I still think that's where we're going to be. I think the number of homes, we typically here in the Twin Cities sell about 75,000 homes a year. We're going to hang real close to that.
Okay.
I don't see. I don't know who you're talking to out there, but from an interest rate perspective, which tends to drive a lot of this, I don't see rates changing much. Maybe a quarter to a half, something of that nature. But it's not going to have enough impact to affect the overall market, which is good. I mean, so we're going to be fine.
Right.
I think realistically, for the next, at least as far as we can see, probably the next 2 to 3 years are going to be pretty solid.
Do you see us getting out of this inventory shortage problem that we have?
No.
No, I don't either.
No.
I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. I don't know how we fix that.
I wish I had an answer for it.
Yeah.
I don't.
Everybody thought, I think for a while there, it was nobody wanted to sell because of COVID, and then it was, well, they didn't build enough homes during the recession, and I think it's a combination of everything. It's this perfect storm.
Yeah.
So I don't know how we get out of that. Well, before we go, so I like to end all of my podcasts with, I always tell people I like to study success. I read a lot about I've got a master's degree, I think, in success. I read a lot about leadership and success. And if there's one thing that you would share with, whether it's a real estate agent or just an individual or your kids, about just success, and what do you think it takes to be successful in this world, not necessarily this business, what would that be?
Keep your promises.
It's a good answer.
When I have conversations with people getting into this business, right, and people are committed to come into this business, and maybe you've had a conversation with your spouse to say, you know what, I'm giving up the 8 to 5, right, and the benefits and all that, because I think this is the career path I really want to pursue. And I promise that if you'll allow me to do this and be there with me, and we're going to walk this path together, that I promise you it's going to be a better life for us going down the road, right? And so you just have to kind of keep reminding yourself that, am I keeping my promise and the promises I've made to the people that are important in my life?
Yeah. It's a good answer, and I think to your point, it's a team effort. You have to have your family behind you and supporting you in this business because it's 24/7, 365, and I never had the 8 to 5 with the benefits. So, it's definitely a team effort on behalf of your family. You know that, having done this for 40 some years.
Yeah.
So, well, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. Thanks for your time. You've educated me on iBuyers, and this has been good information. So, thanks for being here. Thank you for listening to the Raw Real Estate Podcast. If you have any feedback for this episode or want to suggest a future topic or even possible guests, head to wadehansen.com. There you can get links to my Facebook and LinkedIn pages. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel to see the video version of this podcast too. Again, thank you for listening to the Raw Real Estate Podcast. We'll talk soon.